I was born here in the States. My father was from Syria and my mother from Turkey. I grew up in New Canaan, Connecticut, in Fairfield County. It was a fairly conservative community and pretty homogeneous. I think we were one of the only families with the kind of background that we had. I think we were the only Muslim family. And I grew up every summer going to Turkey, where I would visit with my extended family on my mother's side in a small village, all of whom lived in one large compound as an extended family. And I ended up going to college at Swarthmore College in just outside Philadelphia, which is sort of politically at the other end of the spectrum from New Canaan, and in many ways a much more diverse place. And one of the things that I found going through all these different experiences, living in New Canaan, but visiting a village in Turkey every summer for 2 to 3 months, and then going to Swarthmore College, I made really deep, profound friendships with people, although they oftentimes had strong views about one another. And I grew up, therefore, I think, just seeing a lot of value in very different perspectives and finding it very difficult to paint anything in pure black and white. When I went to Swarthmore College in my junior year, it was time to look for a summer job. And I sort of put things off, and so at the last moment I went to the career office, and I found there a brief paragraph describing this organization called Search for Common Ground, which was combining what was developing in me a real interest in conflict resolution with work in the Middle East, which is where my family is from. Swarthmore is a Quaker school, and I had gotten trained there in mediation. I had even tried to start an Israeli-Palestinian dialogue group between Muslims and Jews, which was an utter disaster. But it really whet my appetite and my interest in trying to bridge differences. So I called Search for Common Ground from the career office. I found out they were taking interns, but I was very late in the process, and if I wanted to be considered, I needed to be interviewed the next day. So I skipped my classes, I took the train down to Search for Common Ground's offices and interviewed, and was lucky to land the internship. Over the time that I spent working at Search for Common Ground, I went from an unpaid intern to working on the Middle East program for many years. I then became the director of the Burundi program. At the time, it was the largest and I would say the most dynamic of Search's programs. And then I came back and became the chief operating officer of the organization, the first one that we had, because the organization had grown so much. I was responsible for global programming and the administration of the headquarters. And I left the organization in 2004, largely because my wife landed a position at New York University as a professor. And I joined Search for Common Ground's board at that time, but I left my staff position. I went on to work for the World Economic Forum for a year and a half, and then I was appointed by Kofi Annan as the previous Secretary General of the UN to help lead up an initiative called the UN Alliance of Civilizations, which was established to bridge differences between Western and Muslim majority societies. I went on to work for a media fund that we started to try to produce mass media that could really bridge differences between Western and Muslim majority societies. And we ended up merging that organization into the organization I run for the last 5 years, Solia. The reason that I have been so committed to Search for Common Ground all of these years is because I fundamentally believe, and I know, that this organization is working on what I would call the core issue in the world that is blocking our progress on every other issue. If you care about environmental sustainability or nuclear non-proliferation or the advancement of human rights or virtually any issue in the world, I think one of the primary reasons you'll find that we are not making the progress that we should is because we have not learned as a human race yet how to deal constructively with our differences. And I think Search for Common Ground is tackling that issue head on and proving that you can address your differences through cooperation, through collaboration, and not through violence or even adversarial politics. And I think that's not only a very powerful message, but it's a necessary one for our time. As the world becomes smaller, we can no longer afford to approach our differences with a win-lose mentality, because it ends up being lose-lose. And so that's what's drawn me to the organization. Frankly, I'm convinced from that first internship that I had back in 1993, and it's all the more relevant and important now. And when I think about how my career started and being surprised to find out that you could dedicate your life to this field, I want you to understand that Search for Common Ground has played, is playing, and will continue to play that role for hundreds, thousands, ultimately millions more people.